Hello, I'm Will Howarth, and welcome to the archive. I'm looking back over music that I've written in the past, and this in particular is an introduction to a work that I wrote for Voices and Wine Glasses in 2015 called Parlour. The piece is named after a fictional island in the last novel by Aldous Huxley, 1962, I believe, which was called Island, and the island of Parlour is Huxley's utopia, in which the people are initiated at a young age into, let's call it, psychedelic consciousness through the ritualized taking of some kind of somatic substance, possibly mushroom-based. I was fascinated by the book when I read it, and I was also interested in that time, 2015, in Eastern religion and philosophy. And so the three movements of this piece, Parlour, are called Before Moksha, Moksha, and After Moksha. Now, moksha is a concept from Hindu philosophy. Moksha is breaking out of samsara, samsara being the endless cycle of death and rebirth. So to achieve moksha is something like achieving enlightenment. And this all got mixed up in my head with dreams, near-death experiences, spiritual experiences, psychedelic mind-altering experiences. And so what I was trying to capture in this piece was perhaps something of the ceremony of an initiation on the island of Parlour, the anticipation of the taking of the somatic substance, that being before moksha, moksha then being the trip itself, and after moksha, the afterglow. I wrote the piece while I was studying at music college, and I workshopped it with Coma Voices. Coma stands for Contemporary Music for All. I didn't actually get a recording of any of that workshop, but I think I was quite dissatisfied with the results of it on the day anyway. I mean, the problem was it's technically quite a difficult piece to perform because it involves, amongst other things, chance operations initiated by rolling dice, pouring water in and out of wine glasses to achieve different pitches when they are either tapped or played with a finger around the rim. And on top of that, most of the music, where it has a pulse, is in a 5/4 time signature. So it's tricky, and we had perhaps 20 minutes to workshop and perform it in. So it was never going to happen. I remember at the time the person leading the workshop, I believe her name was Sarah Leonard, I remember she suggested changing the time signature from 5/4 to 4/4 to make it a bit easier for the performers, which was something I was very resistant to because I really liked the effect of the lopsided rhythm. Well, lopsided perhaps, but actually the way I conceived of it was symmetrical. It's sort of a bit of a palindrome. There's this gung, 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 gung rhythm happening. It feels like two beats, a beat, and then a further two beats. It has this symmetricality to it, which I found pleasing and quite hypnotic. So in order to prove to myself that the piece would work and was worth something, I made my own recording of it, in which I recorded all the parts bar a female voice, which a friend helped me with. So what you'll hear is the result of that recording. Now, I'll warn you, this is quite an experimental piece, at least for me. It's a departure from the sort of thing that I usually do, and I'm very aware of its limitations and the ways in which it doesn't work. So this is hardly a magnum opus, but it's an interesting thing that I've created. And so if you do want to listen to it, please approach it with an open mind and be aware that in the first movement there's quite a lot of a rather strange vocal sound. It was ill-advised. I didn't realise at the time how silly it sounded, but basically the idea is that the lower voices will make this wow, wow, wow sound, but with the mouth closed, and it produces this effect that's something like it's a bit of a shock when it first comes in, but Once you kind of get into the hypnotic rhythm of the first movement, hopefully you'll be able to get over that. The second movement is probably my favourite. That's the one that involves chance operations to determine what kind of music is going to be sung. I suggested, in order to minimise sound from the dice rolling, that a mobile phone app is used with a random number generator in place of physical dice. Depending on various dice roll outcomes, you might sing a chord cluster, you might sing a major chord. There was also a dice roll before each utterance, which determined whether you sung at a normal pitch or a quarter tone sharp. So there are some interesting microtonal sounds in the second movement, Moksha. The third movement after Moksha has this solemnity to it, I suppose. Programmatically, it doesn't really make sense because there can't be anything after Moksha. I have only a limited understanding of Eastern philosophy, really. But I think that Moksha is a beautiful oblivion. Or is it heaven? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. There are two components to the music. One of these is the human voice, and the other is the sound of the wine glasses. And the relationship between these two parts changes as the piece progresses. At first, we hear only the wine glasses, and in the recording there's quite an interesting tonality, ever so slightly desafinado, detuned. And out of nowhere, seemingly, comes the voice and imposes a different sort of tonality on it, one that's quite unexpected, and we might say that this represents humanity imposing its will upon the world. We then also have these breathy sounds, holotropic breathing, such as you might hear in an extended breathing meditation to induce trance. But in the second movement, Moksha, the relationship is very different. Here, the element of chance and randomness is introduced, and instead of humanity imposing itself on the world, humanity is led by the sound of the glasses. The performers have to use their ears to pitch match with what they're hearing. And then finally, the third movement is something of a recapitulation of the first. We return to our normal state of being. It's familiar, but different. Following our experience of Moksha, we are left in a state of quiet, contemplative introspection. Our will to impose ourselves on the world around us is reduced to such an extent that, although we return to the familiar rhythm, tapping the glasses, we do not use our voices. There are no vocals in the final movement. We've taken something back from our experience, and our outlook will never be quite the same. The staging of the piece is also quite important. The performers sit in a circle, each with a wine glass in front of them and a utensil to tap it with, along with various jugs of water, with the audience inside the circle. Now, because the piece is intended to portray a ritual which might, in the context of the book Island by Huxley, have lasted hours, really the 12-minute duration that I ascribed originally to the piece is probably too short. In fact, it may be that the longer the piece lasts, the more effective it is. I could imagine a performance lasting half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, maybe longer. In some sense, it's more of a happening, an event, a ritual in itself than a piece of music. Oh, look, this is a real piece of music. It's got scores and everything. If you and your group are interested in giving a performance of it, then I'd be more than happy to oblige you with a copy of the score, or even to attend a rehearsal. Just get in touch. I never mentioned this in the score, but I think the performance would work best in a dimly lit room, perhaps with candles. It could be performed in an auditorium, but I think a cave would be preferable. I've decided to include in the playlist for Parlour a few other short bits from the archive which I think complement it nicely. The first of these is a short video recording that was taken in February 2013 at the South Bank Centre in London with their gamelan set, and I'm in it playing one of the instruments. I don't know who actually recorded this video. It wasn't me, so I don't know who to credit. But if you're the person who took this video and you'd like to be credited, just let me know. You're going to hear a short extract of a traditional Javanese gamelan piece before Parlour begins. After the third movement of Parlour, you're going to hear a field recording of about a minute, which I've titled Some Sort of Bell Workshop. It's a recording, again, whose origins are mysterious. It was retrieved from an old corrupted hard drive of mine, so we've got no provenance for it. Its creation date is unknown. I don't know if I recorded it or someone else. You hear someone speaking about playing a bell in it. I don't know who that is. If you recorded it, or if you're the person speaking, get in touch with me in the comments. The last thing that you'll hear in the playlist is a very old piece of music that I wrote in 2011. So this was back when I was in sixth form. It's just a short little burst of melody in 6/8, played entirely on tapped wine glasses. So this is the, if you like, the origin of my interest in making music with wine glasses, which came 4 years prior to the composition of Parlour. Well, that's probably enough preamble.